Let me ask you something before we even get started. What would it take for a 20-year-old girl from Quezon City, Philippines, to walk into the most powerful structure in women's professional tennis and commercially embarrass every single established star on the roster? Not through controversy, not through scandal, not through a shocking upset or a viral social media moment, just by being exactly, completely, unapologetically who she is. Because that is precisely what happened. And when the numbers came in from the merchandise departments, from the sponsorship meetings, from the brand alignment conversations happening at the highest levels of the sport, the reaction from certain corners of the tennis establishment was not celebration. It was not strategic enthusiasm about how to leverage what they had just been handed. It was something a lot closer to panic. And that story, the one about what Eala's commercial explosion actually did to the people responsible for managing women's tennis as a business, that is what we are getting into today. Every single detail, without pulling a single punch. Picture a standard commercial review meeting inside the WTA's institutional machinery. Spreadsheets on the screen, quarterly projections on the table, the usual names sitting at the top of the merchandise columns. Sabalenka, Swiatek, Goff. These were the faces the organization had spent years and considerable resources building their entire commercial identity around. Corporate partners paid premium rates to align with those names. Sponsors structured entire campaigns around those faces. Major apparel deals, broadcast packages, tournament marquee placements, all of it built around an established hierarchy of commercial value. That was the machine. That was the system. And it had worked reliably, predictably, and profitably for years. Then someone in that room quietly pointed to the top of the column, and the name sitting there was not the name anyone had planned for. It was not the name that had anchored the most recent marketing campaign. It was not the name attached to the biggest endorsement contract in the organization's promotional materials. It was Eala. And according to multiple industry observers tracking the WTA's commercial landscape, not barely first. First by a margin dramatic enough that certain figures inside the sport reportedly struggled to reconcile it with everything their traditional marketing models had been telling them about how tennis sponsorship was supposed to work. Because the idea that a player who had not yet cracked the top 20 could generate jersey and merchandise revenue at the level Alex was producing, pulling in the kind of brand alignment attention that was typically reserved for Grand Slam champions with multiple titles and years of tour-level credibility, seemed to anyone operating inside conventional tennis marketing logic completely impossible. Except it had already happened. It was just another Tuesday for Eala. So here is the question you should be sitting with right now. Why would a sports establishment get visibly uncomfortable about its own player being too commercially powerful? Keep watching, because the answer is more revealing than most people inside that world want to admit. To fully understand how we got here, you need to understand who Alex actually is. Not just the highlight clips, not just the ranking number, the full picture. Born in Quezon City, Philippines on May 23, 2005, she achieved a career-high WTA singles ranking of world number 29 in March 2026, making her the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA Tour history. And not just the highest right now, the highest ever, in the entire history of the tour. Every Filipino player who ever picked up a racket and dreamed about the WTA circuit, every junior who watched the tour on satellite television in Manila, every parent who drove their kid to a court at 5 in the morning. Eala is now standing at the absolute top of that entire lineage. She is the first Filipino to break into the top 30, the first of multiple wins over top 10 players and major champions, the first to reach a tour-level final in the Open era. First. At some point that word stops feeling like a milestone and starts feeling like a defining personality trait. But here's what the rankings don't tell you. Rankings describe results. They don't describe gravity. Because wherever Alex showed up, from Auckland to Abu Dhabi to Dubai to the courts of Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, something shifted in the atmosphere. Stadiums that normally hold polite, golf clap tennis crowds started feeling like a hybrid between a rock concert and a championship fight night. The energy was different. The noise was different. People were not just watching tennis anymore. They were showing up specifically, exclusively, devotedly for her. Coco Gauff, Grand Slam champion and one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet, publicly acknowledged to fans that she was sorry for making them wait before a match against Alex. Think about what that actually means. One of the sport's biggest stars felt the need to address on camera that the crowd filling that stadium had come specifically for her opponent. When was the last time you saw that happen in professional tennis? When was the last time a player in the top 5 of the world looked into a camera and essentially said, "I know you're not here for me"? That does not happen by accident. That happens because the market has already made up its mind about who the main event is. Her breakout 2025 season was nothing short of extraordinary. Entering the Miami Open as a wild card, she registered back-to-back top 10 wins over the number 5 and number 2 players in the world before reaching the semifinals. Nobody modeled that. Nobody projected it. She just walked through the front door and rewrote the script of what was considered possible for a player in her position, at her age, with her ranking. And the sport has not been the same since. Sky Sports lead presenter Gigi Salmon gave her verdict on what Alex represents, saying she might already be the biggest star in women's tennis in terms of her appeal and the crowds that follow her. Not a future contender. Not a rising talent to watch. The biggest star. Present tense. Coming from one of the most prominent voices in European tennis broadcasting, that is not a casual observation. That is a verdict from someone who has watched the tour up close for years and is telling you exactly what her eyes are seeing. Now let's talk about the merchandise. Because this is where the story stops being a feel-good underdog narrative and starts getting genuinely complicated. Nike's collaboration with Alex produced a limited edition shirt honoring her Filipino heritage, designed by Manila-based artist Georgina Camus. It features the sampaguita flower, the national flower of the Philippines, set against a tennis court background. Beautiful, thoughtful, layered with cultural meaning. The kind of product that tells a story before you even read the label. And the market's response? Staggering. The shirt sold out. Resale listings appeared almost immediately, with buyers across multiple continents hunting down their size because they could not get one through official channels. That is not a routine merchandise result. That is a cultural moment in wearable form. Nike reportedly renewed its partnership with Alex in a deal valued at approximately $75 million. Let that settle for a moment. $75 million. For a player who had not yet won a Grand Slam singles title. For a player who entered 2026 outside the top 30. Nike does not structure deals at that level based on sentiment. Nike structures deals at that level based on data, market projections, and the kind of commercial momentum that makes their financial teams sit up straight. And every piece of that data pointed in the same direction. Alex Eala was not just a tennis story. She was a global commercial phenomenon with a trajectory that the sport's traditional power structures had not seen coming. When Alex visited Nike's world headquarters in Oregon, her portrait was displayed in the legendary ambassador tunnel alongside Nike global ambassadors across all sports, accompanied by the caption, "History in full bloom." Nike does not put people in that tunnel as a courtesy gesture. That placement is earned. That placement is a statement. And the statement Nike was making was unmistakable. This is one of ours. This is someone we are building around for the long term. This is an athlete whose story we are proud to tell at the highest level of our brand. Sponsors including Nike, Babolat, Globe Telecom, Bank of the Philippine Islands, and Locally Juice are among her current backers, with multiple major companies reportedly in conversations about alignment deals. Comparisons started circulating inside the sports marketing world to Emma Raducanu's commercial explosion after her 2021 U.S. Open title, which reshaped how tennis brands allocated marketing budgets for 18 months. And the thinking among industry insiders is that some of the biggest companies on earth are looking at Alex's story the same way they looked at Raducanu back then, a once-in-a-generation market entry point. A player with appeal so broad and a fan base so passionate that getting in early means getting in at a price that will look like a bargain in 3 years. Except here is the critical difference. Raducanu's commercial wave crested on the back of a singular Grand Slam victory that she was then unable to sustain due to injury and
Tennis
consistency
requires
issues.
rapid changes in
Alex is
direction and
building
dynamic
something
movements,
structurally
and a
different.
strong core helps
Tournament
maintain
after
control
tournament.
during these actions.
Quarterfinal after
ANTTennis.com
Top 10
notes that
scalp
core
after
strength
top 10
is crucial
scalp.
for maintaining.
The commercial case for Alex Eala is not built on a single miraculous fortnight. It is built on a sustained, consistent, relentlessly mounting body of evidence that she belongs at the very top of this sport. History was also made earlier this year when the Philippines hosted its first ever WTA tournament, the Philippine Women's Open, an event that came into existence largely because of the commercial and cultural gravitational pull of one Alex Eala. Let that sink in. A country getting its
Back to
first
motion
ever
highlights that a
WTA
strong
tournament.
core stabilizes
Not
the
because
body
the
during
infrastructure
explosive
suddenly
movements
appeared.
and rapid
Not because a
direction
governing
changes,
body
common in
decided the
tennis,
Philippines
thereby
deserved a
minimizing
spot on the
injury
calendar
risk.
out of procedural fairness. Because Alex Eala had made the commercial and cultural case for it so undeniable that tournament directors could not look away. She essentially willed that tournament into existence by being the kind of star that makes organizations reach for their checkbooks. Alex herself described the Manila event as the highlight of her year, saying that having the tournament at home was such a big thing because it represented such a milestone for women's tennis in the Philippines and for tennis in the Philippines in general. Not the ranking breakthrough, not the headline-grabbing wins over Grand Slam champions. The tournament at home, the milestone for her country. That is what she led with when asked about the moments that mattered most. And that tells you everything you need to know about where her head is and what she actually values when the cameras step back and the noise quiets down. Now, let's get into the institutional side of this story. Because what Alex's commercial dominance exposed was not just a gap between her star power and her promotional treatment. It exposed something deeper and more uncomfortable. A structural mismatch between what the WTA's commercial machinery was built to process and what Alex Eala actually represented in the marketplace. The WTA's promotional architecture, the homepage placements, the featured tournament articles, the flagship marketing campaigns, the broadcast scheduling priorities, had been constructed over years around a specific set of assumptions about where women's tennis's commercial value was concentrated. Western European players. Grand Slam champions. Names that were already legible to the tour's traditional sponsor base. The system worked for what it was designed to do. What it was not designed to do was absorb a phenomenon with a specific commercial profile that Alex Eala brought with her. Because the Philippines alone carries a population exceeding 115 million deeply passionate sports supporters. Add the Filipino diaspora spread across the United States, across the Middle East, across Europe and Southeast Asia. Florida alone is home to an estimated 188,000 Filipino Americans, making Filipinos the second largest Asian American group in the state. Alex's Miami Open appearances have become a genuine rallying point for the Florida Filipino American community, with organized fan groups traveling from Jacksonville, Tampa, and Orlando to fill those Hard Rock Stadium seats. People who buy jerseys at 3 a.m. to catch a live stream. People who book flights across continents to sit in a stadium for 2 hours. People who do not just follow their player but invest in her completely, communally, with a loyalty and intensity that the WTA's existing sponsorship models had simply never encountered in this form before. When observers started paying attention to how Alex was actually being treated relative to her commercial and on-court achievements, what they found was a pattern that was hard to explain away. Promotional materials featuring players ranked below her. Marketing campaigns that buried her name under coverage of opponents she had already defeated. Scheduling decisions that created friction with her crowd-drawing capacity. Homepage placements and tournament feature articles that did not reflect what the merchandise numbers and the sponsorship conversations were saying about where she actually sat in the commercial hierarchy of the sport. The gap between what the market was saying about Alex and what the institutional machinery was reflecting was not subtle. It was visible. And fans with smartphones and time to spare do not stay quiet about things like that. Screenshots spread. Side-by-side comparisons circulated. Former players started commenting publicly. Tennis journalists began connecting the dots between individual incidents and broader patterns. And the question that sat underneath all of it became increasingly difficult to avoid. If Alex's passport was from Western Europe instead of Southeast Asia, would her promotional treatment look the same? If her fan base was centered in London or Paris rather than Manila and the diaspora communities from California to the Gulf, would the commercial conversation inside those boardrooms feel different? Those are uncomfortable questions. They are supposed to be uncomfortable. That discomfort is exactly the point. Because the most significant thing Alex Eala has done to women's tennis is not win matches against top-ranked opponents, though she has done plenty of that. It is not generate jersey sales that have left established stars looking over their shoulders, though she has done that too. The most significant thing she has done is reveal the gap between who the WTA says it is and what its institutional behavior actually demonstrates when a truly global commercial phenomenon arrives from a direction nobody planned for. Industry voices with years of experience watching the tour have noted publicly that tennis decision-makers need to do everything in their power to help a player who could be a transformational asset to the sport actually thrive at the top of it. That phrasing matters. The need to make sure implies the work is not already being done. It implies that without deliberate, intentional, proactive effort, the default behavior of the institution is something other than what would maximize Alex's commercial potential for the tour. And when you stack that observation next to the documented promotional patterns, next to the scheduling decisions, next to the marketing materials that do not reflect what the merchandise numbers are screaming, it starts to paint a picture that certain corners of the sport's governing infrastructure would probably prefer not to have painted in public. Through all of this noise, through all of the industry chatter and the social media debates and the pointed questions from journalists, Alex remained exactly where she always is. On the court, working. So far in 2026, she has played in multiple matches against players in the top 20 of the world, stunning Jasmine Paolini in Dubai for her first top 10 win of the year, then defeating Coco Gauff in the quarterfinals of that same tournament, then knocking Gauff out again in the round of 32 at Indian Wells. Wins over top 10 players have stopped feeling like upsets for Alex Eala. They have started feeling like baseline expectations. That is how complete this transformation has been. She arrived at the 2026 Miami Open seeded 31st, ranked 29th in the world, returning to the exact tournament where 12 months earlier she walked in as an unseeded wild card with nothing to lose and proceeded to take apart the number 5 and number 2 players in the world back-to-back before reaching the semifinals. Nobody expected that from her last year. Now she is back and the entire weight of expectation has shifted completely. She is no longer the surprise. She is the story everyone came to watch. That is a different kind of pressure. And from everything we have seen over the past 18 months, she is exactly the kind of person built to thrive under it. Here's what strikes you most when you pull back from the politics and the merchandising debates and just look at the person at the center of all of it. She said in her Vogue Philippines interview, and this is important, that she likes to emulate the best of Filipinos. She spoke about wanting to be a good person as something that matters to her just as much as anything she achieves on court. No political statement, no institutional jobs, no boardroom posturing, just a 20-year-old who still walks to the same restaurants she visited as a kid in Quezon City, who is now having to get used to strangers asking for photos on streets she has known her entire life. She described it herself with a kind of honest simplicity that is almost jarring given everything swirling around her. It is weird, she said, because being at home is the most normal thing, but being famous at home is something to get used to. The entire weight of overnight transformation compressed into one honest sentence. She is still that girl from Quezon City. She is simultaneously one of the most commercially powerful athletes in women's sports right now. Both things are completely true. Both are completely extraordinary. And the combination of the two, the groundedness sitting right next to the stratospheric commercial reality, is exactly what makes her so impossible to manufacture or replicate. You cannot build what Alex Eala is in a marketing meeting. It either comes from somewhere real or it does not exist at all. The WTA's institutional discomfort with her commercial dominance will eventually resolve itself one way or another. Either the organization adapts its infrastructure to reflect the new commercial reality she represents, builds the promotional machinery that actually matches what the merchandise numbers and sponsorship conversations are telling them, engages seriously with the Southeast Asian market and the diaspora communities that have turned Alex into a cultural event wherever she competes, or it does not. And if it does not, the sponsors will make the adaptation for them, because $75 million Nike deals do not wait politely for governing bodies to catch up with the market.